though, first and foremost, because that's kind of like one group that we can tackle at one time. Stuff that happened after we can tackle after. I know people are calling it war crimes, and we can debate the terminology all they want. People are going to call it what they're going to call it. So let's just move on with that argument already. First of all, we may be officers here in Los Santos, and before we went, we're officers, and now that we come back, we're officers. But over there, it's soldiers. It's a war led by the Senate. It's soldiers. So
I agree.
It may seem like a very minor adjustment in terms of speech, but that's what they're acting as. That's what we got to call them. The first thing, so Brian blew up the island. What does that entail? Like, what was the damage done? Like, where was the bomb placed? How big was it? Like, what did it blow up? Because I thought we've had people over there recently that
that was
really supposed to. But what is actually blown up?
So what I got told, obviously, when I woke up from the hospital, is the bench was blown up. That's where the bomb was planted.
Okay, well, that seems reasonable.
Yeah, Brian's words initially to me were he blew up the island, and then when I asked for clarification, I guess he then said the room, but then apparently the villa's destroyed, so it was probably the whole villa.
I mean, Sweets is saying he was over there as recent as a couple days ago, and the villa needs to be searched, so it seems to be still there.
Okay. Regardless, we had officers MIA.
Mm-hmm.
Less noted to be in the villa. Right.
Okay. Well, let's just ask Brian during the panel. Did you see anyone in there when you planted the bomb? Did you look around before you planted it?
What does that matter?
How is it not incredibly important if you saw someone or not?
I mean, if we had information that officers were last seen inside the villa and were missing in action, why would we blow up the villa?
We didn't blow up the villa. We've already established that. Sweets was over there 2 days ago and said the villa is intact and he needs to search it for radioactive material. We need to first assess what size was the bomb, what did the bomb blow up, and was anyone in that area? So we should ask the person who planted the bomb, no?
I think we should say that for the panel.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think we can speculate about this all we want, but until we know what the person saw who planted the bomb, it's kind of speculation at its most, right?
Right. Okay. I'll carry on with the things that happened on Sanguine. Apparently the senator and Axel, quite possibly, but given the footage, we know that the senator at least, I guess, threatened Ursula Leichenberg to delete the footage that she had filmed on the island.
Like to kill her or arrest?
As far as it's made aware, it's they would drop the treason charge if she deleted the footage. But then I guess when she informed them that she had uploaded it to the cloud, or at some point, the senator shot in the direction of Ursula Leichenberg.
Okay.
Good.
I mean, I'll be honest. I was there. Out in the second part of the conversation, I was helping out, speaking with Jaeger, who's just been being treated. That's when the senator called from me, and when I showed up, she was in handcuffs. I was very livid at Ursula because I told her not to come, and I told her if she came down there, she could have been seriously hurt. And I was telling her, "What are you doing? This is not a good idea. You're about to go to jail for treason." And the senator was very livid. He was not very upset. He was very upset with her. And I did everything I could to save her life. And I'm glad she's alive today.
What did you have to do to stop him from shooting her? Just was he like going to do it, or was it like a kind of like? I mean, okay, let me.
The senator was convinced.
What I'm trying to get to is, was it like I'm gonna fucking kill her, and then he took out a gun and was like, I'm doing it, or is it like, man, I really want to kill her for doing that? Because I think everyone in this room would be behind bars if we talked about if we went to jail for trying to kill someone. You know, I've definitely said I want to kill Harvey Holden at least a dozen times this week alone, and if that puts me in jail, that puts me in jail. You know.
Yeah, I mean, what really sucks about the whole thing is I tried to defend Ursula and save her life, but I got thrown in the same sentence with the senator. He was very livid. He was seeing blood. I pulled him aside. I said, "Listen, enough bloodshed has been had. There is no reason to do anything here. Let her go. We're not going to push for treason. Enough people have died. Enough people have been hurt.
I think you should have pushed for treason. If she was there on the island disobeying direct orders from the state, the senator, high commands, commissioner, PD, EMS, doctors, every orifice, the state was saying, if you go over to that island, you will be charged with treason. It's beyond me why she didn't get charged with treason, to be honest. I don't care if she's trying to report the news. I don't care if she was objective. I don't care what she was trying to do. Going over there to report anything is, by definition, treasonous. By going over there, that's all it is. It's all it can be, and it's by the grace of God and the senator himself that he didn't charge her, because he could have.
1,000%.
I
And
agree.
I'm glad she's okay. There were definitely shots that were fired above her head, and that's the honest truth. He said, "Do you trust me?" I said, "I trust you." I just fought a war with a man. I've been there for 14 hours, hearing the sound of fucking drones going off, and we're just taking out 50 bodies out of the goddamn villa. So there was a lot going on, and all I wanted was for nobody to die anymore. Enough is enough. Enough bloodshed has been had, and it had to be stopped.
Was she armed?
She was cuffed.
So you had to save a woman from being shot in handcuffs from the senator? Are we hearing that right now?
I did everything I can to save her life.
No,
That's all I
you're
have to
such a
say.
hero, Axel. But why are we
I am.
having to
I
save?
am a war hero. Thank you.
Why are we having to save from the senator? Why are we having to do that?
Because the Senate is the law. That's why.
No, it sounds like the Senate is a murderous, dictatorous bastard.
And I'm gonna have a conversation with him because I do believe he's unhinged. I do believe that he has lost his mind slightly. I know that he means well and he wants to help out, but I feel like this conflict has definitely really affected him as a whole.
I don't care. I'll be honest.
Okay. Well, the senator is your boss's boss, and if you don't like it, then you should quit. That's how it is.
I'm not gonna roll over and quit to a dictator. I'll be honest.
Then we should come together and start pushing for legislations and laws within our city. So one can have absolute
Are you
power.
guys crazy? We're talking about a man who has absolute power over our entire department. This isn't a game of like, oh, maybe we can. If you want to start a movement, a public movement and protest, such as you're right. But in this police department, we have bosses. And if you expect a deputy to listen to you without question, how can you say the same? How can you talk like this to a senator? How can you sit here and say, I question what the senator does, when you would be downright offended, and you are, about Brian himself, Dark? That's hypocritical. I don't
Because
care.
when we go out and face the consequences, the senator's not going to be there. When those people get out of jail and start killing officers over and over and over again, it's not going to be the senator on the front line fucking taking the brunt of the damage. It's not.
It's
gonna
not,
be us
but it's always
every
been
single
that way.
fucking
And this
day.
is the job we signed up for. There were people trying
And
to kill
cool,
us
we
before
have
that
the right
warden,
to not be
and there's
happy
gonna
about that and try and do something about it.
You can do what you want, but you can't speak ill about your superior officers. That's always been a rule in this police department. You can be frustrated, you cannot like the job, but the door has always been there. You're not here by force. The reality of the situation is we have bosses. That's my boss right there at the podium. He's your boss too. But his boss is saying do something. I'm not saying no, I'm saying when. If I don't have to like it, I can go home in my personal life and moan to my friends. I can go home and express my that I don't like it. But as long as I work here, I have to be okay with what I'm doing, or I should quit.
Then I guess I
I'm
should
not
quit.
sure. Okay.
Good luck.
Chief of
Let me
Police
please.
Elizabeth, come back over here. Elizabeth.
I'm not sure I agree with that, Owen. Honestly, if I did something psychotic, I would fully expect my rangers to question me. I would fully expect them to hold me accountable for my actions. And I would not fuss if they tried to hold me accountable for my actions. And I don't expect them to just up and quit if I start acting like a psychopath.
I guess the question comes down to, do I think what he did was unreasonable? Do you think he was acting like a psychopath? And from what I've heard, I don't. I think shooting over the head of someone it's stupid. I wouldn't do it, but it's not to the point where I would be insubordinate.
What about sending the EMS in with a bomb?
I think we should have done more. I think we should have taken a fan and put chlorine gas down there. I think if it makes you feel better to send 100 soldiers in there to die to 7 of them, that's great, but I'm not doing that shit. I think we should have taken more extreme measures. We should have collapsed the entire villa on them and everybody down there. I think as long as holdouts are happening, we're talking about a war, right? If a holdout happens in Maze Bank Tower, we're acting as police officers, and our rules of engagement are different and separate. I think when a holdout happens in a war, what do you expect to happen? How many officers' lives are worth not breaking what is a moral rule to you? To me, not a single life. I'm not going to sit here on my high horse and the high ground and say, I think we should have sent 100 people in, 50 people in, 30 people in, 20 people in. Tell me what number you're okay with dying to get 7 people out of a holdout with Dark, and I'll tell you what I think. How many people are you willing to sacrifice? How many soldiers are you willing to send in to die to their death to get 7 people out of a holdout?
Oh, and
What's the number?
I think you might be missing some information. Can I clarify?
Absolutely.
Okay. So what I was informed of, and this is directly from the EMS in question, Veronica Mars, when she was asked to volunteer, she was not given the information about what she was volunteering for. She was brought to the location. She was instructed that she was going under the guise that she would be giving them medical aid. But she would be given a block of C4 to bring in to the compound. Now, the issue with that is that when they were telling her what she was going to do, Bison walked up and overheard it. He opposed it. In turn, Brian Knight pulled out a gun. He did not aim it. He had it at his side. And he told Bison, if you say anything, I will effing kill you. Veronica was standing right there. What she told me was that she felt that if she declined this request, that she would be killed. And therein lies the problem.
Did she say she didn't want to do it at any point?
Not to them, because she had just heard them threaten someone who was opposed to it.
Was he opposed to it, or was he walking up unannounced into a private conversation in the middle of a war?
It's besides
I don't think
the
that
point.
matters.
It's not beside. I don't think it is. I think it's entirely reasonable for people to be apprehensive of people sneaking up and listening to a conversation that is very important to operational security. If you're planning an attack on someone, not everybody gets to know. It's that simple. When we conducted war operations, we conducted meetings about the war, was everybody allowed in? Was everybody allowed to speak their piece and to hear? Absolutely not, because we don't know who's a sympathizer and who's not, or who would leak information and who wouldn't. Do I think Bison is a sympathizer? Absolutely not. But can I know that just from hearing footsteps approaching me? I don't agree with Bison. I don't agree with Brian threatening anybody, especially a fellow officer and at the time a soldier. I don't agree with that, to be very clear. It's wrong. He should have said, please leave, this is private, like we do in any other situation. However, I do understand being apprehensive about someone approaching you uninvited when suggesting a very important and potentially influential move that could end the holdout.
Oh no!
I mean, let's say it's not Bison. Let's say it's a doctor, an EMS, a deputy,
Svensson.
or an officer, a soldier, whatever that Brian or the senator don't know. Let's say it's someone completely unknown to them.
Past tense.
What are the chances this person might call Kyle Pratt? You know, it's. I hate to say this because I am the sheriff of the Blaine County Sheriff's Office, but we have Kyle Pratt sympathizers in our fucking department. I'm working to remove them. And when they're caught, they will be fired. But there are people that would text or call Kyle Pred and warn him if they found out that they were planning something. I'm not saying that Brian should threaten people. Absolutely not. Don't get it twisted. But I am saying I understand being apprehensive.
And I get that, but the fact of the matter is, he threatened someone in front of the person who he was actively instructing to do something. And that person, at that point, was under duress. She was being coerced into doing what she was doing.
I can see what you're saying, but it's a silent duress where they didn't even know she was in duress. I understand that she didn't feel comfortable.
How would they not know she's under... What?
So what the senator mentioned, Gil Morty, is he told her she's not coming back from this, and she still agreed to doing it.
If she was briefed about the whole thing and she didn't say anything about, I don't want to do this, or are you sure, then how could they know that she wasn't okay with it? She volunteered in the first place. Are they supposed to read her minds? I can understand that she felt pressured to and that she didn't want to say anything because she felt like there was an implication that she could end up like Bison, who was threatened. But she was asked as a volunteer in the first place. No, there's got to be a reasonable assumption that if you volunteered for something, you can back out.
I
mean,
don't agree.
Regardless of what
fully don't
happened,
agree with
Sheriff,
that.
I was there, and I don't agree with the call, not because of what you're talking about exactly, because we didn't get that desperate. We didn't have to send somebody in there. I didn't think the idea was needed in the time because we had enough people around up holding the angles and ready to take them down if necessary. And I wish I was part of the conversation when this shit went down, so I can give them my input on the whole thing.
I wish I could have been there to suggest more extreme measures. I think the real tragedy is that we sent someone in at all. I wish we could have sent a fucking drone in. I wish we could have sent a robot in and a medic uniform.
So many times.
I wish we could have sent.
The door was locked.
I wish we could have sent a bomb in there. I don't care how many of them have to die. I would rather preserve life in a war. If you ask me, is one person's life worth the life of 20 potential soldiers going down after her with guns? Absolutely. If she was unwilling, that changes a lot. But from what I'm hearing, it's a wartime scenario. It's a high pressure scenario where these situations, we're analyzing them from the safety of a conference room 1,000 miles away from where it happened. It's hard to imagine that they were as cognizant as, that Brian and the senator were as cognizant of feelings and emotions as we are right now. I'm not saying they're blameless, but I'm saying it's hard to take everything into account when we're sitting here in a conference room in complete and utter safety, and they were in the middle of a war with combatants mere feet below them.
I mean, I understand what you're saying completely, Sheriff. And I see that side completely. I see the other side of, sending an EMS there as well, too. The thing about it, it was war. And
it is war. And
we were in there for 15 hours. 15 hours. And for the 4.5 hours at the villa, the constant shelling and the drones going off and the bombs exploding and the machine gun fire, it's hard to expect people to be completely 1,000% rational, or to come up with the perfect plan and preserve the most life possible. There was a lot going on. We tried to make the best out of it. And a lot of people did a lot of different things that most of us maybe don't agree with, but it made a difference in the battlefield.
It's really easy to sit here now after the war and pick it apart and use the words of a literal terrorist against those that did it.
I beg your pardon, I never spoke to any terrorists.
I'm not saying you did.
Who's the terrorist?
Well, I know the terrorist's been pretty active in prison.
I'm taking the word of an officer and an EMS. People who were directly involved.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you are.
What are you insinuating?
I know there's people in PD that are taking the word of a terrorist over words of officers or words of soldiers, people that are on our side, people that aren't even giving the benefit of the doubt to the people that lead this police department.
I mean, I've had a lot of people who should talk to me behind my back without even having a simple conversation with me at all. We're seeing things on Twitter. hearing people talk about what I did without even talking to me and understanding my perspective, it happens. I just wish people would just come to the source and talk to them. But I know not everybody's doing that. Some people are. The people that care about the truth, the people that care about the facts are doing that because they care. Other people, they just want to push a narrative because they're mad at somebody or they're upset with something.
What are we doing here? If people want to talk about us, and they can do so. I don't think we should care about that. I'll be honest.
I mean, I don't. That's why I'm talking to you about it, right? That's why I'm
Yeah,
just,
but that's
if I really cared, I would have punished people by now, right?
Yeah. Okay. I think we need to get back to the point this was brought up, which was what Brian and the senator did was a war crime, and I do not want a war criminal as a sergeant in our police department.
I mean, like I said, we can define war crime all you want. We can call it immoral, whatever. The whole what is a war crime is going to get beaten to death in the next couple of days if it hasn't already.
Sure.
The way I see it, the way their uniform was described to me from Stubble, the medics were wearing blue camo, and they're not wearing a medic's uniform. They're wearing blue camo, which is closer to a Navy uniform, if anything. However, I know that there was an agreement made between the Sanguinian terrorists and the state's military force not to shoot medics. However, the way I see things, according to Stubble, the medics were shot at first. If I'm in a war and I shoot at the enemy side, I don't care what agreements are made. As soon as you fire a bullet at the medics, all bets are off. If we're in a war, and let's say, for example, it's a dart versus fence and war. My side's wearing one color, your side's wearing another. We've decided not to shoot each other. As soon as one of my people shoots at yours, all agreements are off. All agreements are off. I cannot. It's crazy to expect people to uphold an agreement. Also, for the sake of the matter, these are Los Santos and San Andreas medics, not Sanguinian. There's no oath of, as far as I know, EMS don't even sign an oath of, what is it, like the doctor's oath? They don't sign that here. Anyway, my point is, we don't owe them any medical help at all. And once they breach the agreement and they start shooting at our medics, why would they ever expect us to hold that up on our end of the bargain? Okay. I know if I was a medic and I pledged to, be impartial and help both sides, as soon as the other side shot at me, I would be not helping them anymore. In fact, I'd pick up a gun.
I mean, I even talked to the medic and the senator to allow them to treat the opposition because in the previous war, apparently, the Sandy Shores one, and some of them got treason in the past for doing their job.
I remember that.
Yeah, the senator said from pretty early on that the people of Sanguine would be getting treatment and they'd be provided and cared for 95. That was a big thing.
But as soon as you shoot at the medics, you have to know that agreement's off.
And are you 100% positive that they shot at the medics prior to Walter false flagging?
According to Stubble, that's what Stubble said, and I listened 100%.
Walter was.
I haven't heard Stubble speak, so.
Walter was some point after I went down, which was the connection of phase 1 and 2. So 2 to 3 hours into the fight. Phase 1, the north side of the island, there was a fishing village on the northeast. And originally there was Jenny Hall and 3 other EMS, all acting in EMS capacity in a Humvee, and they were picking up wounded officers, and they were bringing them from that battle over there all the way back to the triage at the airstrip. And Jenny has said, and the other EMS as well, that they received sniper and RPG fire pretty much instantly. They were taking fire in that phase 1. Now, the word I got from Walter was he was involved in phase 3. I don't know if he was in phase 2, but it's something like a 3 or 4 hour gap.
So how long would you estimate between the first salvo of shots at EMS and then fucking Walter arriving? Like an hour, 2?
No idea. Probably longer than 2 or 3 hours.
Yeah.
But Axel might be able to know because he was there the whole time.
Right? The first time I saw Walter is when we got to the villa.
And that was deep in, right?
That was 7.5 hours into the battlefield. So it took us
phase
a while.
1 was the longest phase, right?
Yeah, that
Not
was like
including
3.5
however long
hours.
y'all were in that bunker. Phase one was a long, long time. And on phase one, we only had 4 medics on the island, and those 4 were getting shot at. And that's when Jenny gave her class 2 to one of the EMS to have on her back as protection in case they needed to defend themselves. She never actually held it in her own hands. And then Jenny had another gun as well. So they had guns on their back in case they got fired at, but they never used
I
them.
mean, we trained them
When
with
they
guns
had to be
before they
fired back.
left. I know
Yeah,
that
we
very
did.
much.
We did.
We trained them
armed
to
them, we
defend
trained them.
themselves.
I thought,
Yeah.
to be honest, before the wartime meetings before the weekends was the plan I heard anyways, was to embed EMS inside squads and they would fight alongside us. I know that changed with the agreement, but I mean, the way I see things is it's the state of San Andreas and every government entity versus the Sanguinian terrorists. If they're going to shoot at our EMS despite the agreement, then why would they expect us to uphold that? And I'll be even more blunt. I think sending an EMS under the guise of medical help in there to bomb them is deceptive. I think it's deceptive and it's an outright lie, but I don't think it's immoral. The only immoral part would have been if she objected to it. And it sounds like she may have silently objected to it, but I'm struggling to find blame for them not to. I mean, I see both sides. I see why Brian and the senator sent her in. I can see why she felt pressured to. It's hard to assign blame there because she was a volunteer and she didn't speak up and she didn't say no and they didn't threaten her. But I can understand
because
that they threatened
Bryson
someone else.
spoke up in front of her,
Right, and I
and
can
he got
understand.
threatened.
Right, but yeah, that's where I'm at on that. I think we're at a disagreement there. But do I think? I mean, okay, we've all been in holdouts, right? All of us, several times in Los Santos.
Mm-hmm.
For every 5 criminals holed up in a one-way, hallway, where they can shoot down the hallway, how many cops on average you think have to die to get them out of that? I'd say for every 5 criminals, maybe 10, maybe 20 cops. Depends on the day. Depends on how good they are. Depends on how much ammo they have. I think sending one person in with a bomb, it's a mercy. To die. But how many cops would have been sent in with guns to die? The alternative, Dart.
We'll try that before. So to give you some context as well.
I mean, how many people need to go down that death funnel to make it okay to send one person with a bomb? How many dozens of cops need to go down that hallway and die to make it okay to send one person in with a bomb? How many dozens?
3 times a death cord.
How many dozens need to go down there and die to make it okay to send one person with a bomb?
If you think that he felt he didn't do anything wrong, the senator, then why do I have people from EMS telling me that he wanted to leave them behind when they were going to leave the island?
I don't know.
Why did the EMS have to beg?
Have we heard his side? Did he even say that? Have we heard him out? Do we know what his side of events are?
I'm pretty sure that I said when we're taking everybody with us, Game Warden. I said on the radio that everybody, including Veronica, is coming back with us. I don't care. We're not leaving. I said that on the radio because a lot of people.
You said that.
I said that. I'm not sure what the senator did, but I can tell you that when people thought we're not going to do anything as far as trying to save Veronica when she's stuck in there, I made sure on the radio to tell everybody that we're going to do everything we can to get her out of there. We're not leaving without her.
Oh my god, I can't believe this is happening.
Okay. The chief of EMS told me that when she was trying to get her medic back, she was told by the senator that they had gotten all the officers out and they didn't care about anyone else. I realize that you said something different, Axel, but the fact that the senator wanted to leave her there tells me something that he felt on his conscience was not right.
I think that's a pretty bold assumption if you haven't spoken to him, because the
Maybe we
two
should
things
talk
you've
to him
said
about
so
that. You're
far
right,
are
yeah.
both differently phrased. The first thing you said is he wanted to leave the EMS. The second thing is he said he got all the cops, let's go. Those are two very different statements that have two different
they're the
meanings.
same thing.
And no, it's not. It's actually not, believe it or not. Well, you're assuming his intention is to leave everybody who's not a cop, thereby intentionally leaving medics. There is also a possible assumption, one that doesn't carry so much of a sinister assumption, that maybe he just forgot, or maybe he thought they were already gotten.
When he
Maybe
was
he
being asked
assumed-
specifically?
Maybe he assumed only cops were down there.
I think we should really talk to him and get his perspective.
I think
on
we should
things.
hear. I think we owe our boss's boss the benefit of the doubt to at least explain himself before we're ready to condemn him.
And I think we owe the chief of EMS a conversation as well.
Absolutely.
I had one with Veronica. I tried to get a hold of Kiki. I couldn't find her. And I told her exactly what happened, Game Warden, as far as my perspective. And I told them that I still don't agree with the fact that we sent the EMS in there. Hell, it should have been me. I wish it was me that was sent in there and did it instead of the EMS.
Objectively, it doesn't matter who it is. I mean, I guess it does. I mean, I wouldn't trade the leader of the operation for a soldier. That's just, I hate to be so blunt, but that's tactics. You can't send the general in when you have a soldier ready to do the same, as long as both are consenting. What I'm trying to say is, I struggle to understand the perspective that it would have been better to send 50 cops into a funnel where we know we'll lose 30% of them or 40%, thus killing 15, 20 officers in the process, versus sending one willing participant. The big question seems to be, was she truly willing? And was Brian and the senator aware of that? And did they send her in against her will? That's the only moral objection I have.
I think importantly here, at least from my perspective, is regardless of whether we want to consider this a war crime or whatnot, Brian Knight was complacent in putting a bomb on an EMS and sending them to die. That is a fact. And I do not want that as a part of PD.
Yeah, I should just get him 2 bombs. One should have been on a dead man switch. That's the real mistake.
Okay, I'll ask you another question. If Brian Knight had done this on Los Santos shores, would you say the same thing?
It depends. Are we at wartime? Are there 8 terrorists holed up with rockets and guns in a position that is fortified and entrenched, where it'll take 30 to 40 cops that must die to get them out? If the answer is yes, then absolutely.
And if the answer is no, so if he's acting in his capacity as a police officer and he does this,
If he's acting in his capacity as a police officer, then no. I don't
why?
think he should have done it. Because we're police officers, we're peacekeepers in that essence.
Right.
And we have other
and
tactics to deal with stuff.
right
We're not,
now,
dealing with, we're not dealing with terrorists that have rockets, hopefully.
yeah, that's fine. I'm not talking about him as a soldier. I'm talking about him as a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
And I do not feel that he is, given he made that decision and was complacent in it, I do not trust him as a police officer.
Has he demonstrated that he wants to do the same as a police officer, or are we assuming that because he did it as a soldier, he'll do it
I
as a
think
police
that's
officer?
unimportant.
Because I got bad news. What I did overseas, what Luca did, what Raven did, what Snow did, is way worse than whatever bullshit this is. And I guess we shouldn't be cops either.
Listen, if you don't want to be a cop, that's up to you. But right now, I'm talking.
I'm happy to be a cop, but I'm saying I think Brian, much like myself, can separate being a soldier and being a police officer until he's demonstrated the ability not to. I don't think we need to assume that he's broken now that he was a soldier and can't go back to civilian life. And that's a pretty bold assumption.
Right, but it's not about civilian life. It's not about whether he's broken or not. It's the fact that he's done it once.
And I've done worse. Do you want to fire me? Have I ever, despite all my time overseas, despite all I did, have I ever demonstrated the inability to be a police officer to you?
No.
Then why are we doing the same for Brian without giving him a chance?
Okay, so what you're saying is, hold on.
For me, when it go ahead.
I need to get you a whole perspective here. So you're saying we as a police department should not consider anything they did over on the island as soldiers, as you say, as part of their employment as a police officer.
You can consider it, but you can't fire him outright.
Why
can
not?
Consider what they did, but you shouldn't fire him before he has a chance to prove that he's broken. You know,
I don't care if he's broken or not.
When's the last time Snow blew up a couple civilians with an Apache in Los Santos? The answer is never. But he did do that overseas. I saw him do it. Do I
Civilians?
Unarmed
assume?
civilians?
But yeah, armed civilians.
No,
Terrorists,
unarmed.
you mean?
I wish it was that black and white.
What?
The rules aren't that simple. We're police officers in Los Santos. The rules of engagements are pretty simple. If they have a gun at you,
I'm
shoot
sorry. No. I think that us, as soldiers over there, should be held to a slightly higher standard than a bunch of terrorists in a hole.
I agree we
Personally.
should be held to a higher standard. But what you do as a soldier, I'm not going to fire someone for. The rules of engagement are different. Like the senator said himself, if you find drugs on somebody and you want to do it, you have permission to do so if you think it'll help you, right? I'm not going to sit here and fire them for doing that now. That feels... You can't change the rules for the circumstances of a war and then change them back to fire them the next day.
Nobody changed any rules.
What?
The senators, it was the Senate. Listen, I don't care. As far as I'm concerned, we can judge a person's ability and whether or not we want them as a police officer based on their actions, regardless whether those actions occurred at war or at home.
The
Right,
question
but-
is,
but-
the
but
question
the
seems
thing-
to be,
The thing about it though, Dark though, I mean, in the SimCon light, then we should have fired everyone in that room that clapped for no war crimes when the senator announced at the meeting. And Bison was there as well too, who cheered for it too. So should we fire everybody that has that kind of belief?
Did
at the
anybody
time?
actually do anything though? We're not about actions here.
But you're talking about morals and principles and values, right? Isn't that fucked up to cheer for no war crimes? You'd want
Sure, it's
somebody
fucked
who is
up.
that.
What?
Yeah, it is.
Cheering
but
for no war crimes?
well, the phrasing is difficult here, Axel. What he's saying is the senator announced there's no such thing as a war crime. Let's give it to him, and people cheer. Not like they were cheering that there were no
Okay.
war crimes successfully. Bison, amongst the many others, were cheering that the perspective that there was no way they would get charged with war crimes because they didn't exist prior to the war.
okay,
That's
but
the perspective.
we are comparing somebody cheering, which I agree is bad, to someone being complacent and placing a bomb on an EMS. That's what we're comparing right now.
You can say EMS all you want, but at that time they're a soldier. I mean, they've been
They were-
shot at. They were carrying a weapon. They were a medic. You can call them a medic if you prefer. But I
Okay,
think
medic.
calling it EMS is doing it a disservice. It's manipulating the language.
Right, sure, but regardless, we're comparing apples and oranges. We're talking about people's actions overseas. I just don't
And
think we
that's what
can.
makes that's what makes the whole thing, messy and complicated. Is
Well,
because
let me
it's
try
a
a more
Senate
direct
war, not a
analogy, if
PD
that's
war,
okay.
right?
Let me try a more direct analogy. During the war, our people who are, prior police officers, then soldiers, now police officers again, did things over there they would not be allowed to do over here, right? Many of them, almost all of them. They carried weapons they weren't supposed to. They used equipment in ways they weren't supposed to. They engaged in rules of engagements they weren't really meant to. I mean, we were behind the turrets of tanks, blowing people up just for carrying a weapon. Now, are we going to hold that against them over here? Who is the gunners of many of these weapons? Are we afraid about their judgment now? Because now that they're a cop again?
I think again we're comparing apples and oranges here. We had people who signed up for a war with armed combatants, and they engaged in that
Right.
war as expected. Throwing a bomb on a medic, it was not what was expected of them, right?
Maybe
Given
not
the-
what you expected, but it's a war, Dark. People, this isn't,
Okay, but it's also a war crime.
it's not definitively. I mean, I don't want to get
Not
into the
by
argument of a war
definition,
crime,
Yeah.
but it's definitively not a war crime to put a bomb on I mean, for lack of a better term, a suicide bomb is not a war crime.
Also, what I remember when they explained the plan, when I asked them afterwards what the fuck happened, the way it explained to me, the EMS was supposed to go in there while treating one of their bodies, was supposed to next to them place the bomb, then run out, and then have everybody inside explode. That was the original plan, as far as I've been told. Now, obviously, this is something I heard from Brian, the senator, but we'll have to talk to them exactly and figure out what exactly they think of, what they're thinking of, in the time when this happened. Only we don't have that full story yet. We only have the EMS side of things and a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm trying to illustrate, and we may be understanding each other at this point, but just disagree, which is fine. We should just wait for the panel and wait for the senator, because that's probably gonna well, we can discuss what we think happened as much as we want, but most of what we have is at best secondhand opinions, and at worst third. So we should get the senator in here to explain what he said to the EMS in terms of we should leave them, or we got everyone we wanted, or whatever. We should get Brian here to explain whether he thought the EMS was under pressure or was coerced or whatever. But as far as do I think Brian should be terminated for something he did at a wartime? No, because I think the standards of war are different. And because he adapted to the standards of war doesn't mean he won't unadapt when he comes back to Los Santos. That's an assumption that I'm not comfortable making to terminate someone. Listen, I'll be blunt. I don't like Brian. I for 3 months ago, he confessed that he had murdered people in the name of the chief of police, Bobby Smith, and he gotten away with it. And the statute of limitations had elapsed. He joked about killing Cody Sharp. He was proud of that. Do I like Brian? No. Do I think he's a good guy? Absolutely not. I think he's a giant piece of shit. But do I have a problem with what he did in this specific instance? I'm not so sure yet. I want to hear his side.
There are a lot of people who have a problem with what he did.
Have any of them spoken to
And
him?
that's. I think some of them have, yes.
Part of the problem. You know what? I'll wait for the panel.
We're
Yes,
missing the chief of police and Toretti. They both have quit.
It's already quit, boss. I hate to keep bringing it up.
Elizabeth seems like I don't know. I'm trying to bring her back, but it seems like she has quit. So,
All right. Well, can I say some things?
absolutely.
There's been a lot of jumping around hoops and metaphors and comparisons and consequences and apples to oranges and all that bullshit, but it really isn't like black and white. It's really fucking tough because, like you said, Axel, both sides, right? They got points. At the end of the day, Owen could say, yeah, a lot of the boys they used to do a lot of fucked up shit way back, and I think it's very easy to disconnect wherever the NATO operations were, and it was far east or west, it was other side of the goddamn planet. But I think what makes this whole operation so much more like up close is it was a 3-minute boat ride, and it wasn't against random terrorists that we never met before. It was people fighting for Sanguine that are citizens of San Andreas, and it was we weren't just using soldiers, we were using medical personnel and EMS doctors and whatnot in that
Come
fight.
on, Stubble.
We might have
please.
originally thought, let's put the medics in the squads, but then we said, let's put the medics outside of the fighting, and we'll have them established as medics that are not involved in the conflict. But I wasn't there. Owen wasn't there. Doc, you went down shortly after me, and Tessa, I don't believe you were there. Axel's the only person that can really say what happened. But things got really bad, right? That's why these things happen. And there were a lot of plans, there were contingencies, and a lot of them failed. Whatever happened on the island was not the initial plan that I spent a long time trying to get in a certain way. It all fell apart. And I don't know. It's very easy to say, yes, Brian, he did a colossal fuck up, and it was very wrong, and it's hard to keep him employed because it's like, yes, he's acting as a soldier, but he's still a sergeant in the PD, because it's this weird gray area where the Senate decided to militarize the police department and send us over to do an operation on a foreign soil when that should have been the job of the military. We never should have been asked. Actually, you and the Senator never should have come to me as an undersheriff and the leader of the HVTU and said, I need you to run an operation. We're going to militarize the PD. We're going to get a bunch of equipment and we're going to invade a foreign soil. This never should have happened.
Yeah, I mean, I had that conversation with him. I mean, I didn't agree with
the military should have done. You shouldn't have been on that island. I shouldn't have been. Bobby Boulderman shouldn't have been, right? But the shit reality is, that's what the Senator decided to do. And here we are. We're going to pick up the fucking pieces. And it's were we operating as members of the PD in a military operation, or were we operating as soldiers of the military? And I don't think we have that answer right now. So it's kind of hard to say, can we fire Brian and Walter? I'm very, very tempted to push for their firing because they're fucking psychopaths. But were they psychopaths in that operation. They did what they needed to do to survive. Like Axel said, Walter, he changed the tide, but he saved a lot of lives. He got rid of a lot of people that shot at our friends, shot at our co-workers. But it's like, did he do that as a soldier that was false flagging as an EMS? Or did he do that as an officer in a police operation that's false flagging as an EMS? Because like Owen said, half the things that they did over there, we'd never do here. It's not the Lost War where it's on San Andreas soil, it's somewhere else. So we have to do what Owen said and do that panel and hear those sides. And we need to, as High Command, decide, what was this? Was this a PD operation where we were militarized, or was this a military operation? Because right now we have a lot of different opinions. And that's just on the internal punishments on a few of our members. I'm not even going into the whole shit with the senator that we were talking about earlier. And the shit with the public and the DOC. The entire government, as it's built up right now, is in a colossal shit show. And if we make any mistakes over the next few weeks, it could all crack and fall apart. I don't know if you've noticed, but instead of us being unified as San Andreas against the terrorists, it's kind of everybody going at each other.
Yeah, they may be behind bars, but their tendrils are stretching between us.
Yeah, I mean, not a lot of people are trying to heal the divide right now. In fact, they're trying to make it even bigger so they can conquer. When people are divided, when people are weak, they're not really strong and united. They can attack much easier.
The way I see it is they may have lost the war, but they're trying to win an information one. They're trying to break us apart. And I regret Reed leaving. I wish I hadn't been so confrontational, but I stand by what I said. The senator is our boss's boss. And if we don't like it, our recourse is to quit and protest, not undermine him. It's unprofessional.
I don't agree with that. I'm going to have to say, like, I kind of agree with Reed. Like, yes, the legislation says he's all the power, and the legislation says he can fire and do whatever the fuck he wants. But at the end of the day, if he's acting kind of like outside his purview as a sane person, then it's kind of our responsibility.
But do you think he was acting insane? I haven't seen any information that makes me think he's acting insane.
We're only talking about things
I
like
haven't
San
heard him
Andreas.
out.
Why was he on a rooftop with a machine gun and he gunned down unarmed people inside a gem pod? I had a sergeant in the DOC do that.
Didn't Axel
Somebody
just
threw
say
a
that's
shoe
not
at
what
her.
happens?
Axel said that he didn't do that.
Axel said he didn't.
So
shoot.
no, hey, the senator definitely shot Kyle Fred.
Why?
Okay.
Because Kyle Fred said, "What are you gonna do up there? Sit there and shoot me?" And he shot
Oh
him.
no.
Yeah, he got
Got baited.
definitely- He got baited 100%. I only shot the person that I told, if you throw that shoe, because I was on the edge, he was trying to knock me off the edge. I'm gonna shoot you. And I warned him multiple times. He said, "Fuck you" for saying Queen. Threw the shoe in my face. I shot him.
Oh, so you shot one too?
It sounds like the
Not
same
Fred.
situation.
In the same situation, yeah, because they're throwing shoes up there.
Shot
Right.
shoes.
I mean,
I
I mean,
was about to
we
bring
have-
up
we
how I
have
fired
preached
a
that-
DOC sergeant for doing that. So that's
Yeah, that wasn't a very good point, Axel. I'll be
I've
honest.
shot someone for someone to shoot me
I
in
mean,
prison before.
it was
but
that
it was during a
off the
riot,
goddamn fucking
and I wasn't on
ledge.
the roof.
If I fell down there, they would have ate me. They would have fucking all
Okay,
ate me.
were
for
you
sure.
gonna fall down
I was on the
if
edge.
you got
Yeah.
hit? Was there like a railing or anything?
I got fucking whacked in my head. Yeah.
Was there a railing, Axel?
I mean, there was, but I was on the edge of it because.
you stepped away from the railing.
You think you could have maybe like stepped back from the railing so you wouldn't have fallen in when you saw the shoe?
Do we have any more information on the senator to convince Owen that he's a fucking
What are
psycho?
you trying to say exactly?
Like, I'm just thinking, if the threat is getting hit with a shoe and falling into prison and getting beaten up, wouldn't getting away from the railing just negate that entirely versus shooting the person?
Yeah, that's some wishful thinking, Sheriff.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I've definitely shot a prisoner for throwing a shoe, but I was on the ground. It was there to breach in the showers, and it looked like a fucking tear gas grenade. So I think the situation needs a little bit of examining. If the senator's shooting people from a rooftop with a machine gun for simply speaking to him, that's something I don't agree with. But again, I'm going to wait to hear it from him and question him on it before I'm willing to speak out against him, especially to subordinates.
I mean, I've been seeing him since then. Ever since that incident happened, he told me to drop him off, and that's what I did. So I'm having a conversation with him one-on-one regarding everything as far as what happened. So I'm hoping that it can lead to something good, because when all this bullshit has been going on, I think the most important thing is we just need to learn from this and learn from either the mistakes or things that happen, so we can build a better government, in my opinion, in the future that is more well equipped to handle something like this if it happens. So people just don't turn on each other, and then somebody has to fall on the sword for things to get better.
Out of curiosity, I'd like to get the room's opinion on this. Did the senator, through his actions, attempt to murder Kyle Pred?
I mean,
Not during
wasn't
wartime, not on Sanguine, in Los Santos. Did he try and kill Kyle Pred?
that's a question you have to ask him. He did
Well,
say
we're
give him
asking
medical
you.
after.
I'm going to side with Dark here and say he's asking you directly. In your opinion, as a police officer, was it murder? You saw it
But
happen,
he's
right?
not here, so we can't speak out against him.
Who isn't here?
The senator.
No, but
Dark is asking Axel if what he saw looked to be attempted murder.
yes.
If you want to go by the law, I would say yes.
Right. So we have. This is. Listen, I really want to be on the same page as everyone, and so this is my perspective coming through here. We have a senator actively committing crimes in Los Santos.
I don't think we're gonna be able to talk to him.
Why?
Why?
What have you seen?
Libby just texted me and said a senator just died to PD.
To
What?
PD? Like,
What?
I guess? I don't know. I don't have
What?
context. I don't even know if it's him.
Why is Cap Terranova saying
400. What's the status of Miss Monroe?
long live the Senate? What the
Ocean
fuck?
King.
Yeah, what happened?
I think Leo attacked somebody, so he was shot down.
Okay, what's the situation with the senator?
Read the report from 40 minutes ago. Senator in like quotation marks.
Libby killed him.
Unsure.
Are you talking about the city hall senator situation?
Possibly yes. I've been in a meeting.
No, that was possibly a fake senator, and he got shot down because he stabbed an officer and took somebody, an EMS hostage, and then tried to escape the vehicle given to him, and they shot him down.
Oh, for fuck's sake! All right, 10-4, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Apparently, it was a fake
it's
senator.
a fake senator. It's not Pumbig.
Okay, so all right.
Anyway,
I thought it was unusual that a senator got attacked and didn't hop into a tank.
yeah. My point there being, if we have a senator committing crimes, you know, at what point do we at least start questioning the guy? Listen, I understand.
I'm happy to question him at this point.
I'm on about questioning
In
him
fact,
as a,
if I were
as
there,
a
I would have tried to
leader.
arrest him.
I wanted
Yeah.
to shoot him, but I'll be honest. He is the law by definition, legislation, and I would have been committing attempted murder myself, and I would have been thrown in the
You don't
prison.
have to shoot him to place him under arrest, Axel.
Well, when I saw him do that, I thought to
Like
myself, how do I
political
stop
document.
him? How the fuck do I stop him? Because it says in the legislation, the Senate is the law.
Yeah, that doesn't mean he can break the law.
Well, when I've been told they've RPG'd and tanked people in the past and got
Yeah,
away
they-
with it.
Brosi did take a tank to. You remember that, right? Dark
The
Jamestown Street.
Yeah, I heard it again today. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a historical basis that the senators can't just kill people.
So I think
I
Axel,
don't
what
know
you've
if he can.
We've never
Oh.
challenged it, to be blunt.
I'm
I
reading
guess.
it, and it does not say he's the law.
I just want to make a point here.
It says he has unlimited power.
The commissioner himself has just said, essentially, Axel, I don't want to speak for you here, and it's not. I'm not trying to put you down
I mean,
here.
I'll tell him that to him. If I get fired because I've told that to my boss, by
No,
all
no, no.
means. I mean,
Listen, what I'm trying to say is, you were afraid to do anything against the Senate because of this legislation and the way he's been acting. So we have the commissioner of the police department who is afraid of the Senate and their actions because you were afraid that you could get killed by the Senate.
I mean, I've read the legislation just now. I think Stubble's going to say the same. There is nothing that exempts him from the law. It just says he can make the law and terminate any government employee at any
We might
point,
be
you
getting
know?
somewhere.
He can
We
make,
might
he
be
could, he
getting
could
through
change
to
the definition
Owen.
of murder to no longer include him, but as he hasn't done that, he is still subject to it, the way I read it.
What if he says, if you try to arrest me, you're fired, and he fires all of us? What happens
Well, isn't
next?
that, I mean, that's something that I think we had, who did that like 4 months ago, right? Didn't that happen literally? Like, who was it? It was someone in high command, right?
Huh?
They fired someone for trying to arrest them.
Ooh.
Didn't that
Yeah.
happen? Am I wrong?
Dog thing. Yeah.
Was it the dog thing? Was it
Yeah.
Wrangler?
Yeah, I think it was right. Yeah.
Right?
Wow.
Yeah. So I guess we
Pretty
have.
sure that whole thing. Yeah.
How did that go? What was our decision there?
Restructure.
So we didn't really get an answer.
Yeah, we get a book closed. Train crash.
Oh,
Well,
geez.
generally speaking, I think if you try to fire someone who's trying to arrest you, they probably still arrest you. I think that's. I wouldn't listen. If I went to, let's say, Axel tried to murder Dark right here, right now. I saw it happen. If you tried to fire me, I would still arrest you. I mean, I guess that comes down to like if you took my keys while I was doing it, then it becomes a little complicated, and I don't know how I'd handle that, but I would still arrest you until I was no longer capable.
So, do we arrest the senator for attempted murder? I know Bundy took some evidence.
The way I'm reading the law, we should. I'm basing this all off of what you
It was
said.
Harvey that took the evidence.
Yeah, he's got the
Alright.
report.
Okay. Well, there's a report up. Even better. What is your report number?
If you type
And
in
we
Fred,
charge
then it'll-
Axel
it's
for
type like Fred gets
accomplice.
shot. Investigative report, not incident.
Like the
Two
key would be
birds,
to
one
get him in
stone.
handcuffs so fast that he couldn't open the MDW and write a legislation to exempt himself before we got him, you know? Because if he did that, then technically, I mean, this sounds very childish and very like silly, like the rules are made up, but that would be what he's allowed to do. He's capable of, given his power. But as long as we prevented him from doing that, I don't know if there's a precedent for being able to speak stuff in the law. He'd have to write it down first. I don't know. I'm honestly just trying to feel this out as I'm talking.
No, yeah, it's I think, to be honest, that the shooting was one of the first things I heard, and then the bomb situation, and then the Ursula situation. So, from my perspective, obviously, again, I haven't spoken to the guy, but from my perspective, from what I've heard, the senator is not a very professional word, but unhinged. So that's why I am judging more harshly any actions that officers took over there, because clearly the guy that sent us over there and was, I guess, leading over there was is either not in the right state of frame of mind or is just a psychopath. And so,
I mean, it's not as I don't feel as comfortable saying that because he did something wrong, he always has been broken. I mean, I've known Pumbig or Senator Davis for more than a year, and he never seemed off to me. He seemed aggressive. He seemed brutish, brash, even very direct. But I've never considered him like unhinged or unstable until I heard he tried to murder someone over the weekend. I guess it's not for me. It's not like because of what he did on Saturday or what he did on the weekend makes everything in the war questionable. It's more like we should handle things as they happen, as individual scenarios, and we shouldn't jump to conclusions about the whole situation before we know we have him in cuffs. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have a conversation with them. And then, based on the report, the statements, everything, we push for a charge.
Yeah.
What happens if he gets convicted?
Then he goes to jail for attempted murder, and then he gets back out again. and I assume he's still in his position. So Axel's about to get fired, and so are we. But
Yeah,
it's right, I guess.
I'm probably gonna lose my
Yeah.
job doing this, but at least we're doing the right
He
thing. and
can't
we're-
fire all of High Command, can he?
He can.
Yes,
I mean, he
but-
can,
He's
but
got
will
to
he?